and welcome to a wintry writing vlog where I am preparing to write the next draft of my novel. If you're new here, my name is Stephanie and I am writing my very first book, which is called Project Lily, and I finished the third draft a month ago, let it sit for a few weeks, then I revised it for a few weeks, and it's almost time to start writing, but I have a little prep work to do first. And this is on top of a major snowstorm heading my way. So this is the perfect opportunity for me to dedicate a bunch of time to preparing to write my book and working on it and wrapping a few things up before I start writing, because I'm going to be trapped inside anyway. Right now the expectation is about 17 inches of snow, so I'm not lying when I say snowstorm. And I am ready to stay inside. It's going to be a cozy writing vlog. There's going to be things keeping me warm, things keeping me busy, and of course, I'm going to be enjoying the beautiful snow and working on my book. I have a lot of random things I need to do to prepare to write, so I'll be interspersing my winter activities with writing. The first thing I'm going to do is review my plot grid. It has actually been about 4 or 5 days since I last looked at my plot grid. I built this plot grid in the last round of revisions that I did, and essentially what a plot grid is a series of rows and columns, and you grid out the story. So you have a row of chapters like 1 through whatever, and then every single column is a different aspect to the story, like a character, a relationship, a magic system, a plot. And you go through and fill in everything related to that column in the corresponding chapters. It really helped me see my story, and I got to see it from sort of a bird's eye view, which was really helpful. And before I start writing, I want to take one last look at it, make sure I didn't miss anything, make sure everything makes sense. When I was working on it a few days ago, it was something that had been on my mind. I was working on it for 4 or 5 days straight, and I've been doing revisions on this book for the last few weeks, and it was very heavy on my mind. I've taken several days off, and now it's time to get back into it. I think I will come at this with fresh eyes, and that will help a lot while I review my plot grid. I'm not going to spend a ton of time doing this, maybe just an hour. I want to refresh my mind and make sure that everything that is supposed to be there is there, and then I'll be one step closer to being ready to write my next draft. Even though I'm really anxious to start writing the next draft, I know that this prep work I had to do was really important. I want this draft to be much better than the last one and to be a version that I'm satisfied with. It won't be perfect, but my goal is to at least make it feel like a cohesive and immersive story. I'm taking the effort now to make sure I have all the information I need and that I'm thoroughly prepared. So that way when I do start writing, it will be a much more seamless process. I don't want to get stuck frequently and figure out plot lines on the spot, which I have been doing in the past. I'm hoping that all of this planning will take much of the guesswork out of my writing and that I can focus more on the writing itself. My plot grid is done. All I did was add a little bit of information to it. It was pretty complete already on its own, so I just added a little bit of random things, either character thoughts or plot things that I remembered that I didn't put in there, things that I wanted to not forget when it came time to writing draft 4. I will be relying heavily on my plot grid as I move into writing draft 4. I want to review the plot grid, the corresponding chapter that I'm going to write before I write that chapter. So before writing chapter 1, I will look at my plot grid, organize my thoughts, and mentally prepare to write before I write chapter 1. Same thing for every sequential chapter. Then as I finish writing the chapter, I'm going to go back and update the plot grid so it's accurate as to what the story is now. I do tend to change things around a little bit as I write, and I want to make sure that my plot grid is completely accurate to the story. So now that that's finished, I want to move into something a little different and what I believe is quite fun, and that is going through reader feedback on the first chapter of Project Lily. Before going into draft 4, I wanted to get some feedback on my writing and how it's looking, so that way I could know if I was on the right track or if I needed to pump the brakes before moving into draft 4. Over the Christmas break, I sent the first chapter to one person to read and get feedback, and I received that feedback and we had a discussion, and I'm going to share in general with you what that feedback was and what we talked about. because I think it's interesting. And I actually sent this to my sister, and I'm very, very lucky that my sister is a true beta reader and ARC reader. She's been doing this for years. She reads hundreds of books every year, and I'm just very, very grateful that she is a resource that I can rely on. She said she was going to be completely honest, and we talked about it, and she agreed to read my chapter. So I was very, very excited to send it off to her and hear what she had to say. I did give her a few questions to answer, and because it was only the first chapter, obviously these weren't going to be huge in-depth questions, and I couldn't ask very much about the characters and the plot. So I just focused on more of the writing and the structure of the chapter and what her overall thoughts were. Because for me going into this, I just wanted a general sense of, is my writing decent? Is this going somewhere? And those are the answers I definitely got in this process. So my first question to her was, would you keep reading after finishing chapter 1? And she said, yes, I'd like to see where it's going. That is a win for me. That answer is so much better than no. And if somebody is willing to read the first chapter of my book and want to keep reading, that's fantastic. The next question I asked her was, how do you feel about the level of world building in chapter 1? Because I am writing a fantasy that borders on high fantasy, there's a lot of politics, kingdoms, people that get mentioned. And my concern was that maybe I was dropping too much in the first chapter. So I asked her to comment on that. And she said, I think it's a good amount, not too much, but I don't think I know everything yet, which is good. She shouldn't know everything in the first chapter, and she knows that. So she thought it was like the perfect amount of world building. Again, really happy with that feedback. I then asked her to comment on the characters, any general observations she had. And the first was, I lacked quite a bit of physical description for the characters introduced. And this was something I honestly hadn't realized I did. And I think this is, I'll probably mention this a few times. I know this story so well in my head, and I know the characters and what they look like so much in my head that sometimes when I'm writing, I just forget to communicate that. And this was definitely an instance of that. She was like, sometimes you mention a hair color or an eye color, but everything else is missing. So she caught that. That's good. That's something I'll be aware of as I move into the next draft. The next thing she commented on, I can't really talk about because it's a very plot-centric thing related to the character. But all I'll say is she questioned a writing choice that I made. And I explained it to her when we talked afterwards, and she understood where I was coming from, but she said, I still don't fully buy into it, and I'd have to read more to see if I like it or not. And that's fair. But that was a really interesting thing for her to pick up on. And it's always good to see things that readers may not agree with. And this is definitely something I'll have to keep my eye on as I continue to have other people read my book and work on this draft. The next, I asked her about the general dialogue and narration. How does that go? She did call me out on something that I have been struggling with, or that I thought I had overcome, and I apparently did not. And that is my first few paragraphs of this novel. I've always struggled with the first few paragraphs. I've never really known how to open my novel. And she said, it's fine the way you opened it, but the language is very flowery for the first few paragraphs. And then we move into the next rest of the chapter and it's not very flowery. And she said, it's not that one is better and one is worse. It's just that they're different. I 100% know why this happened. And it's because I have spent quite literally hours, and I know I shouldn't have, but I did. I've spent hours trying to craft like the first paragraph of this novel to make it sound really good. So when people read it, they're intrigued and they can see the imagery and things like that. And the problem is I didn't continue that through the rest of the chapter, and that's what she noted. Really what this boils down to is I have to make a decision about how I want to write. Do I want to write super flowery for the whole book? Do I not? Do I want to do like a mix of the two? And that's really a personal decision for me. She just noted that it felt different, and I appreciate her finding that. The next thing she noted really shocked me, and that was she noted a plot twist in the first chapter. And apparently I spoiled it myself. I did not really even anticipate this, I put it in there simply as I thought it was foreshadowing in a sense, but apparently it was just spoiling the plot twist. So basically, I'm just gonna take that out. This is a really good instance of readers helping you with your book, because my book could have gone on like this if I'd had no one read it, and my book would be less fun, and I don't want that. And the last one I think is super interesting, and it says, it seems like you are trying to force the reader to interpret the scene exactly how you picture it. Now, this was not my anticipation. When I write, I just want to give the reader enough information to figure out what's going on in the scene. But she gave me 2 examples, and they're really good examples. And when I went back and read the chapter after reading this, looking for these things, I can agree I do this way too much. Obviously, this is something I'm going to fix in draft 4. I know draft 4 is more for me character driven and plot driven, but this is easy stuff for me to fix, and I don't mind fixing it if it's something I note while I'm reading and rewriting. But I'm really glad that she pointed this out, because again, as a writer, when I'm writing these scenes, they have been in my head for over a year, and I know what they look like. I can visualize them in my head. I know what the dialogue is going to be. I already know where the emphasis is. I already know what every character is doing in terms of emotions and movement and what they're thinking. And when I'm writing, I just try and get all that stuff out. I try to put emphasis on the proper place and do all the stage directions, but apparently I'm doing that too much. I'm really glad I gave this to a reader, because I would not have caught this, because this was just me trying to tell the story that was coming out of my head. And apparently I'm telling it a little too well. That summarizes the feedback I got from her. I'm really, really happy I sent this out. I think this feedback was great. I think it gave me a lot of stuff to work on and some encouragement that I feel like I'm on the right track. So I will take some of this stuff, obviously some of it's technical writing craft, but some of the stuff I will take into writing draft 4. I will be doing outlines tomorrow for my chapters, and I'm going to be taking this feedback on chapter 1 specifically and incorporating it into my outline tomorrow. The reason I'm not going to move into outlines tonight is because I have to prepare for this snowstorm. It is hitting tomorrow morning. I want to get everything I need to get done. And I'm also going to enjoy the evening. It's going to be cozy, relaxing, because even though it's not snowing outside, it's very, very cold. It's actually much colder today than it will be tomorrow. The high today was 16 degrees, and I think the feels like temperature was -3. And because it's so cold outside, I just want to stay inside, sit on my couch, cuddle up with my blanket, do some fun evening cozy activities. I'm gonna take the night off. I did some good work today, so I'm gonna reward myself and enjoy a little bit of time before I head into chapter outlines tomorrow, which will be a ton of work. I've been embracing taking breaks more recently, and it's a good way for me to unwind and relax. Today I started working on a puzzle. I love making puzzles, and it's admittedly something I don't do as much anymore, so it was nice to get back into that hobby. I also watched a Hallmark movie, another favorite pastime of mine. This one is about a writer, so it was fun to watch. And I really enjoyed my evening off. It was a fun and cozy way to enjoy the winter snowstorm. It has already started snowing. It's about 9 a.m. and the weather forecast has changed. It's now going to snow about 20 inches. It's going to be a lot. I'm going to stay inside most of the day. I haven't decided if I want to venture out yet or not. It would be fun, but it's going to be snowing like 2 to 3 inches per hour later this afternoon. And I'm just not sure if it's safe because people have to shovel the sidewalks and stuff. So we'll see if I decide to go out later or not. It's going to be kind of spur of the moment decision. But that means it's the perfect time to start my outlines for my first few chapters of my book. I've decided to only outline the first 4 chapters. I think that's a good starting point. I don't want to outline the entire book because what I've learned about myself in my writing is I tend to change my mind about how things are structured and about the plot and what's happening in a chapter. And a lot of that changes when I write. I'm still a pantser at heart, which means I come up with things while I'm writing all the time. And I don't want to outline the entire book, like every detail of the book, because I can change my mind and things might change while I'm writing. I don't want to essentially waste my time by outlining chapters way far in the future if it could change. I want to do the first few at once because these chapters of my book have always been very steady. They haven't changed very much. And this is more for me just to make sure I put every detail in that I need to. As I move through writing draft 4, I do plan on making outlines for each chapter, but that's going to be as I go along in the story. So that way, if anything changes, I can adapt really quickly and I don't have to rethink an outline or anything like that. I just will always do it on the spot. These aren't going to be very complex outlines. I'm just hoping for around 20 to 30 bullet points per chapter in a particular order of what's being talked about or mentioned or described. I actually did this in draft 3. I took a chapter and I outlined it before I wrote it, and it ended up being one of the most useful exercises I've ever done in writing. It helped me keep track of all the little things so I didn't forget mentioning them. It helped me not get stuck while I was writing because everything was essentially already planned out, and it just made the process so much faster for me. So a little bit of work on the front end meant a lot of progress on the back end. I want to take this exercise into draft 4 partially just to see if it will work for every chapter I'm writing. One thing I've learned kind of recently is to start experimenting a little more in my writing process. Just because I have thought something worked doesn't mean it actually worked. And I've started doing a few different things here and there and improving my writing process. And I want to keep trying new things because you never know when you're going to find those 1 or 2 things that really make a difference in your writing. And it's just such a relief when I find these things. This is like a theme of my life, but I don't know how long this is going to take. My goal today is to complete the outlines for the first 2 chapters. And if I finish that early, I will definitely keep going. I do plan on joining a live stream later to help keep me accountable and to make me sit down and do this, and hopefully I'll make a lot of progress during that as well. I did wake up early today also to get myself motivated and ready to write so I could make some progress before lunch. So I'm going to go ahead and make some tea and settle in and start making these outlines. Well, it finally started snowing. This was my first big snow of the season, and I was fully prepared with a supply of food, a clean house, and clean laundry. All I had left to do was my chapter outlines. They ended up being quite a bit of work. I had to take everything from my plot grid and put it in a sequence of events. It required a lot more thought than I had anticipated, but I hopped on a live stream and that really helped. It forced me to sit there, focus, and work diligently on my outlines. I didn't get tons of work done yesterday with my chapter outlines. I did outline 2.5 chapters, and that was really nice and it was productive. Going on the live stream really helped to make me sit down and focus, but it was hard to focus after that because it was snowing and I just wanted to enjoy the snow and partake in my puzzle and TV shows and just enjoy being snowed in. I think it snowed around 18 inches last night. It's going to snow a few more inches today, but that's not really going to be a huge deal. It was really nice to take a break yesterday and not write very much and enjoy myself. And I'm going to do the same thing today. I have 1.5 chapters left to outline before I reach my goal of the first 4 chapters. And once that's done, I will have finished all of my prep work for writing my book. Since I didn't have a lot left to do in my outlines, I sat down, buckled in, and got them done. That also meant I had more time to work on my puzzle today, which I'm really happy with the progress I made on my puzzle. I think it's looking great so far. And it was a really great way to wrap up my day. My first 4 chapters of my book are completely outlined. I'm really happy that I did this because it forced me to sit down and actually think through each chapter. And now I have a really complete sequence of events and picture of what this chapter looks like before I even start writing it. I think this will really help me in my writing process, and it'll make things go both more easily and more quickly. Overall, I did a lot of great prep work for getting ready to write draft 4 of my novel. It wasn't a lot of stuff I had to do, but just some random things here and there that helped to get me in the best shape possible before I started writing. And this means that I am 100% ready to start writing draft 4 of Project Lily. I cannot wait to get started. I truly feel like this draft is going to be so much better than all of my previous drafts, and I really think my story is coming together and it's becoming better, for lack of a better word. And I just can't wait to get started on it. Thanks for joining me as I prepared to write my book, and I will see you in the next vlog when I start writing draft 4.